excited and a little nervous to be your MC on live television, so please cheer me on as we ring in the new year with a new class of heroes who you voted to be your top 10.
Tell me something, mediocre model. Are you a wet chihuahua?
No, ma'am.
Then tell me, why is it the audience can see your jelly legs shivering in the frame?
Alright, everyone, take a 30-second break and we'll take it from the top.
Wait! You.
What's your name?
Shima Fukuro, ma'am. And what is it exactly that you do? I, run camera too.
You'd gone to high school with the boy.
Hey, look who finally made it.
Hawks had been periodically inviting you on these random food outings for the past couple of months now. He'd started telling you to call him Takami now.
I don't know if I can share the stage with you on Saturday. I might get nervous. You'll have to hold my hand. Sorry, doll. Duty calls.
Wait, what? You just got here! You squished your eyes shut as he gave your hair a ruffle. And by the time you opened them again, he was gone.
Please, Kudo.
You felt safe and comforted by his presence.
Just know I'll be behind camera too, cheering you on the whole time.
Fukuro was going to do everything in his power to make sure that while he was manning the camera, you got the spotlight you deserved.
I think it'd be kind of impossible to get boring footage with you as the subject. Oh, I definitely agree.
What are you doing here? Well, I'm supposed to be getting interviewed by you. But if you're gonna be using that tone, then I'm not sure how many people are gonna watch. What a load of cock-a-doodle bullshit!
Trust me. I'd rather sleep in or order takeout directly to my house and stuff my face with spicy nuggets while watching movies all day, and I'd have a much better time if you—
Just what were you two? I need to know if I've taken a big bite of idiot sandwich by—
Trying to date Japan's #2 pro hero. You're not an idiot for having feelings for Hawks. And you're not a bigger idiot for hoping that he returns those feelings. But we start to enter a gray area when you guys start dancing around your feelings like you've been doing for the past few months. Was there ever a point in the whole dressing room debacle you were telling me about in which you blatantly asked him what your relationship was? You can't expect someone to have the answer to a question you haven't even asked yet.
Here I am rambling about Hawks. Youngji, I gotta go. Yeah, you did have to go. Because right now, on the other line, was the man of the hour. The familiar husky voice came over the speaker. It was then, as you continued to hear his voice, that you realized you hadn't turned off the interview that was playing in the background. You dove off the couch towards the living room table, almost banging your head against the glass as you fumbled with the remote. Finally, after successfully muting the television, you let out a strangled, "Takami! Hey! What brings you to this phone number?"
Smooth.
No particular reason. I was just back in town and was wondering what you were up to.
Hawks was back in town? He'd never even told you he'd left town. "Nothing much," you replied. "Just, watching TV." You waited for an additional response, but none came. So now you sat on the floor, running your hands through the forest green rug that lay in the center of the small living space. You could hear the chilly breeze blowing from his end of the line. Cars honking in the distance. Hawks normally didn't call wondering what you were up to. He usually dropped quick texts snarking on your latest shoot, or sent a car out for an impromptu outing. He usually wanted something. So for him to call out of the blue like this, only to string you along on a dead-end conversation. You continued to rub the carpet as your eyes returned to the winged hero's silent ghost miming on the television. Rub, 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 rub. Talking with Hawks. It was less like a conversation and more like a game. You found yourself having to press the right buttons in hopes of making even the slightest dent in his exterior. Rub, 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 rub. But he was always so fast, ducking and dodging, or sometimes straight up flying off anytime you got too close. Rub, 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 rub. Sometimes you wondered if those crimson wings of his were really for flight, or just another way for him to close himself off to you. Rub, 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 rub.
Whoa! Hey, you okay?
It took the sharp sting of your hands to snap you out of your daze. How long had you two been sitting there? This might have been the longest conversation you've had with Hawks in weeks that didn't involve being on someone's set, and it had so far consisted of, what, 8 sentences? No. No. You weren't okay. There were too many words left unsaid to be fucking okay. You didn't want awkward silences on the phone. You didn't want half-assed conversations on a first-class flight to the middle of nowhere. You wanted Hawks. Let's do dinner. Hawks would be the one to show up early. And he would be the one to immediately order an extra-large concoction of various sodas and juices mixed together at the soft drink machine to form a sludgy brownish-green liquid in his cup and desecrate the poor thing in seconds. What are you doing? Waiting on a 4-piece combo with a side of large fries. You blinked for a second, fighting back the smile that threatened to peek through your stoic features, ruining the tension you were trying to ride out on the 15-minute walk from your apartment to the tiny Quicken Chicken a few blocks away. Takami wasn't allowed to do that. He wasn't allowed to be dumb and talk to you about fried chicken with a mouthful of ice. The cheap crushed kind that was really easy to chew and tasted like tap water that'd been left in the pipes for too long. Just a 4-piece? You quipped. That sounds oddly out of character for you. Stop talking. Oh, well, it's 4 pieces, he amended. They just ran out of 20-piece boxes, so they stacked them in a bunch of little boxes and they gave me the 5th one free. Of course! We couldn't have Chicken Little feeling peckish now, could we? You're supposed to be upset. Takami snorted. How long you been saving that one? The coat he wore was way too light. The way the wind was picking up on the way to the restaurant, you could tell it was going to rain. Oh, that? That one just came to me. There's something about being in a place that serves birds with a bird that makes the puns fly. You could scold him, but you weren't his parents. Besides, you didn't know enough about them to replicate their behavior anyway. Oh, bravo, doll.
Please continue.
Why, thank you, good sir. I'll be here all week.
Is that so? I'm afraid I can only provide payment for your comedic services in the form of a strawberry milkshake.
You faltered. Hawks, I don't need a—
I got an order for a large strawberry milkshake!
A nasally teenage voice shouted across the counter. You eyed the hero incredulously. He only shrugged and grabbed the drink, tossing a
"Thank you"
over his shoulder as he quickly made his way to the back of the restaurant. You stared at him, before quickly following suit. The restaurant was practically empty, most of the 5 o'clock dinner rush having cleared out. All that was left were businessmen too tired to look up from the screens searing into their pupils, and equally haggard parents late from daycare runs who didn't have enough patience to further investigate their children's cries of, "Mommy! Mommy! Batman! Batman!" It was the perfect compromise. It definitely still fit the bill of hole-in-the-wall restaurant, but it was a chain, so that's a plus on the whole publicity thing. And it wasn't 10 a.m. this time. 7 o'clock is a decent time to do dinner. And Quick and Chicken had sentimental value for the two of you. For all intents and purposes, it was the first place you two had met. Like, really met and had a full conversation. And Hawks would never tell you this, but it was that Christmas commercial at Quick and Chicken that made him tell his manager to call your agency any time he was scheduled for a brand deal that needed an extra model or actor. It felt kind of bittersweet as you slipped into the booth across from Takami, who slid you the Pepto-Bismol pink milkshake in its cheap styrofoam cup. "So," he said, crunching on the last of his ice. "You wanted to talk?" "Oh. Right." You'd been so caught up in his banter and the way he'd ordered for you and led you to where you were seated, you'd almost forgotten that you were the one who'd asked him to come here in the first place. In the same way you were pressing buttons to try to get Takami to open up, it seemed he was pressing buttons of his own to make you forget. But no more. No more games this time. "What are we doing?" Hawks cocked a brow and tilted his head in a questioning manner. You'd seen this look before. It was the same look that played over and over again as you looped the interview. You waited for a response, but it was like you'd pressed pause on the television. Because to me, it looks like we're running around like chickens with our heads cut off. And I have to admit, it was fun at first, being whisked off in private cars to secluded places. But it started to lose its charm around the third time you blew me off. Your pupils darted around as you tried to search him for any hint of an answer. But in typical Hawks fashion, he gave you nothing to work with other than a plastic gaze and rehearsed lines. "I'm not trying to. And I would tell you where I was going if I could, but I never once asked where you were going, or what you'd do when you got there, or when you'd be back." You quickly cut him off. This was the same speech he had given you a few days ago when he was being too much of a little bitch to tell you what he really wanted to say, and frankly, you didn't want to hear a rerun. You're a pro hero. Sometimes, a lot of times, you go off to mysterious places and you can't tell people where you're going or when you'll be back. I get that, I really do. But would it kill you to tell me when you're heading off and maybe let me know when you're back? You allowed your eyes to fall to your lap as realization set in. this wasn't just about dating Takami anymore. I care about you, you said. Like, I genuinely care about you, and I care about what you have to say. Even the dumb teasing thing you do while we're on set, because it's that same dumb teasing thing that gave me the confidence to make anything out of this shit show that is my mediocre modeling career. And it's what's giving me the confidence to sit here and pour out more of my heart than the suspiciously thick gravy this restaurant uses to cover up the powdery taste of their loaded mashed potatoes and... You allowed your voice to falter before you could ramble anymore. Hyungji's words echoing in your head. I'm just saying. You can't expect someone to have the answer to a question you haven't even asked yet. And so, raising your gaze to meet his again, you asked it. Takami, do you care about me in the same way that I care about you? Takami shifted his gaze towards the plastic lid of his cup, fiddling with the little red straw with its chewed-up end. He began. He opened and closed his mouth, trying to find the right words each time. He hadn't expected you to say all of this. Takami was getting ready to be ranked one of Japan's top heroes again. This meant he was the best of the best. And being number 2 meant he was the best of the best of the best. He had years of tactical and combat training. He could talk circles around any and everyone and render them unconscious with the flutter of his wings. So how was it that you were able to catch him off guard in the back of a Korean fried chicken joint? I can't, he stated. You blinked. You can't, you repeated. Hearing you say it back to him only served to make him hear just how lame he sounded. He restrained himself from gripping his cup too hard, his fingernails beginning to poke through the exterior. So, you tried to keep your voice even. Did this mean anything? Or were you just dragging me on playdates this whole time and putting me back on your shelf when you were done? There was something eerie about the calmness in your voice that sent a shiver down his spine and left him frozen in place until you got up to leave. Never mind. This was a mistake. Well, wait. In a last-ditch effort to keep you from leaving, he shot up from his seat, causing the table to screech obnoxiously across the floor, and grabbed your wrist. Don't touch me! In one swift movement, you used your free hand to grab your milkshake and dump the pink contents onto the man's head and chuck the cup at him when you were done. At this point, any patrons who were previously oblivious to you were definitely looking at you now. The nasally cashier had just been handed a giant bag of food that could only be Takami's order, but quickly ducked into the kitchen to avoid any conflict. You didn't give a damn! If anything, this invigorated you. Let them look. As a matter of fact, you hope they took out their phones too. Fuck this guy.
Fuck this guy!
Don't you ever, you said, ripping your hands out of his, call me that again. I'm not your doll. And with that, you turned on your heel and stormed out of the building. To say you were fuming as you stomped your way down the street back to your apartment was an understatement. You weren't aware of just how many people stayed out this late at night until you felt their eyes on you. So you stomped louder, harder, with as much vigor as you possibly could. He can't. He fucking can't! The hard clunks on the sidewalk turned into splashes as the rain began to pick up and the harsh wind assaulted you. You had been worried about Takami's light jacket, but if you were being honest, you weren't really one to talk. You wanted to beat yourself up over this. You wanted to say, "See? How could you be so foolish to think that someone like Takami could ever go for someone like you?" But that wasn't the case. What really pissed you off was the fact that you knew you weren't crazy for thinking you could have a chance with him. There was something there, and he was so close to grabbing it that day in the dressing room. So for you to reach out and grab that something, and then lay it out on the table for him to take, only for him to say he can't? That pissed you off more than any self-criticism you'd held onto earlier in the day. You dug your feet into the ground deeper and deeper with each step, and you dug them into the tile as you entered the lobby of your apartment and smashed the elevator button. Upon reaching your floor, you dug them into the flat patterned carpet with a soggy squish on your way to your front door. Were you an idiot? No! Clearly, the fucking idiot here was the one who was somehow incapable of caring about you! You hadn't realized just how infuriated you were until you were standing in the doorway of your apartment with the door ripped off its hinges and in your hand. A shaky voice came from behind you. You whipped around to face the intruder, the door swinging wildly in the process. There was a thud, followed by the sound of something scattering across the carpet. Your eyes widened as you lowered the door to reveal Kuro's round eyes, floofy hair wet and stuck to his face, still wearing his frumpy beanie. He had been thrown onto his backside. A crumpled gift bag lay next to him, a set of VHS tapes tossed on the floor nearby. The VHS tapes! You completely forgot he told you he was stopping by on Saturday, today, to hand you the copies from before. He blinked owlishly at you. A trickle of blood dripping from the hem of his beanie and down his face. He didn't seem to notice, only smiling sheepishly before asking, "Is this a bad time?" Yes. Yes, of course. Yes, I understand the additional charges for the damage. Yes, and for it being after hours. Yes. Okay. Thank you again. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye. You hung up the phone and rested your gaze on the timid boy sitting on your couch, a bag of frozen broccoli pressed to his forehead upon your insistence. "How's your head?" you asked. "It's fine," Kuro replied. It's really not that bad, and I barely feel it.
You bit your lip. Are you sure?
The sound the door made when it hit you didn't sound fine. You felt awful. Out of all the people you wanted to brutally assault at the moment, Fukuro was not one of them. At the very least, let's take a look at it just to confirm it's not too serious. You reached out to take off the boy's beanie, but as soon as your fingertips brushed the knit yarn, he jumped back, nearly falling off the couch. Whoa! Oh God! You shrieked, immediately putting your arms behind your back, afraid of hurting him for a second time that night. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. It's fine, Fukuro whispered wearily, his lanky legs sprawled out in the air in an almost comedic fashion. It took a moment for Fukuro to recover and return to his seated position. He muttered out a shy, "Sorry," and kept his head in his lap to hide the blush that crept up his neck and cheeks. I'm, really self-conscious about my hair. It's something kids back in high school used to pick on me a lot, and I don't like how messy it looks without my hat. Sorry, he repeated. No! You waved your hands frantically. I should be the one apologizing. I shouldn't have grabbed your hat without asking. I'm sorry. It's fine, Fukuro breathed out, raising his head to look at you once more. What did they say on the phone? Maintenance said it's gonna be a few hours before they can send anyone to fix this thing, you said, gesturing to the iron door responsible for this whole situation that now leaned lamely against the kitchen counter. A few hours? Fukuro repeated. That's fine. I can hang out a few hours. You blinked. Kuro, you don't need to hang around just for some people to come fix the door. If anything, I think you should go to the doctor, or at least home to get some rest for the night. Kuro shook his head. I can't let you sit in your apartment inhabited by God knows how many people, with your door literally torn off its hinges so anyone can come in. You tried to reason with him that you'd be fine, and that the chances of someone just waltzing into your apartment uninvited in this particular complex, where most of its inhabitants tend to keep to themselves, were slim to none. But Kuro wouldn't budge. I just want to make sure you're safe. Just when did he get so stubborn? For some reason, when he said that, you felt muscles relax that you didn't even know were tense. You allowed him to stay. Upon hearing you hadn't had a few meals today, Kuro actually asked if you'd like for him to order food. You tried to decline his offer, arguing that you had food in the apartment and that you weren't even that hungry. But that argument quickly deflated upon being interrupted by the sound of your stomach crying for help. You'd forgotten you'd never actually drank that milkshake. The two of you settled on a tray of pastries from the coffee shop around the corner from your apartment for a quick and easy delivery. It was quite amusing watching the delivery guy's face twist up in confusion upon realizing there was no door. You asked to see the VHS tapes Kuro brought with you, and he obliged, setting up the tapes using a VHS player he brought along with him. You were glad it hadn't been damaged in the fall. Though, it wasn't until he was crouched behind the TV stand, fiddling with the wires, that you became painfully aware of the interview between you and Hawks that was still playing silently on loop since this afternoon. You felt your stomach drop. You wondered if he noticed, and if he did, what did he think of you because of it? Did he also notice how red and swollen your eyes were? And how they were beginning to develop bags? Fukuro paused after successfully connecting the cables and poking his head from behind the screen. Did something happen while you were out? You don't seem okay.
Me?
You asked, pointing a finger to yourself.
Of course, you idiot. Just who else would he be talking to? Oh, yeah, I'm fine,
you chirped. You flashed the boy a reassuring smile, which might have been able to fool someone if it weren't for the tears presently streaming down your face. He honestly didn't think you realized just how worse off you looked in the few minutes it took for him to set up the television. Kuro inhaled, before nodding to himself. He crawled out from behind the TV, made his way to the center of the living room, and plucked the remote off the table. He looked at you as he changed the channel, effectively booting Hawks off the screen and replacing it with you. Just you. He then made his way to the kitchen counter on the other side of the room and grabbed 2 paper towels, one to grab you a pastry and the other for your face. He then sat down next to you on the couch without a word. This wasn't how this was supposed to play out. You were the one who injured Kuro. Therefore, you should be the one taking care of him, not the other way around. You opened your mouth to apologize for, well, hitting him on the head with a door, having him buy you dinner because you were too much of a wreck to think about something that literally sustained life, and, oh, yeah, crying on the couch in front of him only to insist it's fine, like some sort of psychopath. But Kuro cut you off before you could dare.
I see you, he said. You're constantly doing everything you can for everyone but yourself. You reach out as much as you possibly can, and when someone criticizes you, you're quick to correct yourself. You shouldn't feel bad for wanting more. You deserve more. You stared at him in awe. Your cinnamon cookie long forgotten in your hands. How did he know that? How was he able to observe so much more past the confines of his camera lens? He caught your gaze and immediately scooted away from you on the couch. Wow, sorry. That sounded really weird without context. Kuro's bashful laugh cut through the room, and you let out a breathy laugh of your own. There was something about his melodic tone that made it so you couldn't help but smile every time you heard it. No, don't apologize. You wave your hands frantically. I should be the one apologizing for staring at you like a creeper. I just wasn't expecting to be read in my own apartment like that. Right, sorry. Kuro rubbed the back of his neck, shifting his gaze to the green rug in the center of the room. You prayed he didn't notice the tears in the woolly fabric from your scratching. Ba-san says I need to give a warning before I do things like that. You nodded, looking back at the screen. This might be a little vain to say, but you looked really good. Which would seem pretty obvious, you were a model after all. But contrary to popular belief, constantly seeing yourself airbrushed, caked in makeup, and being meticulously posed in designer clothes, illuminated in ideal lighting, and then turning around to see yourself in an oversized sweatshirt, shorts, and a bare face, made you feel like a potato when you weren't on camera. But this wasn't like the other times you've been photographed or filmed. Your hair and makeup wasn't done and wouldn't be for hours. You were wearing jeans, snow boots, and one of those poofy winter coats that made you look like a marshmallow. To put it nicely, you weren't exactly couture. Yet, somehow, Fukuro was able to capture you in all of your potato glory
and make you look better than some of your professional shoots. You might even go out on a limb here and say you looked almost ethereal. Are you nervous? You glanced at Fukuro. Nervous about what? The Billboard Awards happening next weekend? The one you're hosting? Oh, shit. In all of your running around worrying about hawks, you'd completely forgotten that by this time next week, you'd be on stage in front of hundreds of thousands of people on live television. Right. You swallowed. Right, yeah, no, I'm peachy. Kuro blinked. You want to throw up, don't you? Oh, very much so. Kuro hopped up from the couch and rushed over to the kitchen and began fumbling for a cup. Second cabinet to the right, you called. He grabbed the cup, filled it with water, and ran across the room to give it to you. You accepted the glass and took slow sips. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. Kuro crouched down in front of you on the couch, wanting to be absolutely sure you were okay. You shook your head after taking another sip. No, you're fine. I've been so in my head about other stuff, I forgot about my literal job. You set down the glass as the nausea subsided. If anything, I should be thanking you for snapping me out of it. You're right. I deserve more. And it's time I focused on what's really important. It wasn't until you heard someone clear their throat and saw a middle-aged man with a toolbox standing in your doorway that you realized you'd spent the past 3 hours crying and being vulnerable in your living room with a gaping doorway for your whole apartment complex to witness. The two of you jumped out of your compromised position. You quickly made your way to the maintenance man to explain what happened and where you'd placed the unhinged door. By the time he had finished repairing the door, and you'd paid the man and sent him on his way, it was midnight. It wasn't until Kuro was absolutely sure that the door was secure and you were safe that he felt okay to head home. The awkward hug you two shared as you parted ways was oddly comforting. And as he left, and you closed the door behind him, you could still feel his warmth. The rain was really coming down hard now. And it was especially noticeable as it beat down against the windows of Takami's penthouse. He never really liked staying in his apartment. Okay, well, correction. He never really liked staying in this apartment. Everything was white with whatever modern furniture the interior designer infected the place with. Whenever he walked in, Takami felt like he was in one of those fancy phone stores, not his home. He was honestly too afraid to touch anything and feared someone might scold him for making a mess. If that were the case, then whoever was waiting to jump out of the woodworks and slander him for his cleanliness must have shit bricks when the man of the hour walked into his front door, dripping rain and artificial pink slop onto the carpet. His feet tracked sticky pink footsteps into the fibers of the floor as he made his way through the living room and into the kitchen. He glanced at the clock on the stove. It was 2 a.m., which really meant 1. Takami never bothered to set his clocks back. He opened the fridge and tossed the remains of his chicken nuggets into the bottom shelf. Normally, he would have devoured them well before he left the restaurant. A 20-piece nugget? There better be a toy at the bottom of that bag because that was practically a kid's meal. However, after you stormed out of the restaurant, making quite a splash in the process, he wasn't really in the mood to stick around and finish his suspiciously shaped chunks of chicken. Fuck. Fuck. No, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Takami shut his eyes and shook his head to try and get out of his own head. But the pink splatters left behind from his hair after he'd done so didn't exactly help him forget about what he'd done to you. It wasn't like he had a choice. He had to. Besides, it was for the best. Everything you said at the restaurant was right. Takami was random, flaky, and he was stringing you along. The man didn't have commitment to anything. He barely even committed to getting groceries. Which explained why the only thing in the fridge besides the greasy nuggets was a half-empty gallon of chocolate milk, which he took to bed with him. Takami peeled off his soggy clothing, hoping he could peel off the woes of the day with it. He slipped into a pair of warm sweatpants, leaving his torso bare as he slinked under the covers. He hoped the half-gallon of milk would be enough to knock him out, so he wouldn't have to stay up, over-processing earlier events. Still, as Takami began to drift off to sleep, he couldn't help but wonder what you were doing.
Now we have a very special guest today at the Dream House. He's our number 2 hero and your number 1 dreamboat, a man of immense speed and incredible precision. And yes, it is confirmed that he saved 4 people while flying to the studio this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all my non-binary and gender-fluid friends, give it up for the winged hero himself, Takami Keigo!
Takami was used to the grand introductions, filled with over-the-top verbiage strategically written to capture the audience attention and butter up the guest of honor all in one fell swoop. He'd done these interviews dozens of times before. It was just protocol. However, this time, to know that it was you who was the one stroking his ego, even if you were reading off a teleprompter, made him bite back a grin. Maybe it was the fact that he knew where you started. A stumbling mess who could barely read a single line without stuttering. To see where you are now made him proud. Like, really proud. Like, puff out his chest and cheese like an idiot proud. And the way you said his name and drew it out at the end? Oh, he quite liked that. But the man was on camera. And even though he didn't have a script, he was definitely acting. Thanks for having me. I gotta say, that was quite the introduction. How long did you spend practicing that in the mirror? You didn't miss a beat in responding. About as long as it took you to fly here. There it was. His favorite part about working on set with you. This beautifully choreographed game of cat and mouse that you've spent over a year cultivating into the perfect waltz. He took one step forward, you take one step back. He'd shift to the side and you'd follow suit. And then, every so often, without warning. He'd switch up the footing to trip you up a bit.
You know, I think this is the first time we've been on camera together without a script. Does this mean all the stuff I used to whisper in your ears I can say out loud?
Takami leaned in, propping his elbows up on his knees, and folded his gloved hands neatly on top of one another. He cocked his head to the side, silently observing the way you faltered. Your face heated, and you shifted uncomfortably in your seat. You almost fell. Almost. That implies that you actually said anything worth repeating. Takami's eyes widened, and you leaned back in the plush sofa with a smirk. He wasn't even mad about it either. That's what he loved about stepping on your toes. Sure, you stumbled, and sometimes you did fall. But when you got back up, boy, did you soar. So, tell me, Takami. Now it was your turn to lean in and fold your hands over one another. Oh, this ought to be good. How was your childhood? Wait. What? Takami blinked. He glanced over at the teleprompter just to be sure. No. That wasn't one of the questions you were supposed to be asking him. I'd say I was just about as reckless as any other kid with a giant pair of sentient wings on their back, Takami replied. Is that so? Your lips widened into a smile that didn't quite fit your face. And your father? He didn't mind you running around being reckless? Oh, I'm sure everyone's parents minded their children's recklessness. Takami's words were slow and calculated. His eyes flitted over to the production crew. No one seemed fazed by your questions. Was this some sort of publicity stunt? What were you playing at here? Everyone's cameras were focused on Hawks in anticipation, except for one bulky camera placed innocently on its own tripod without anyone to man it. That one remained focused on you. Its red recording light casted a glare on his eyes, making him squint. Come on, Takami. Focus! You're on camera, remember? The show must go on. However, not even his best training could have prepared him for what he saw when he opened his eyes. Your body had shrunken down to about a fifth of your size. You had nubby arms and legs. Your hair had been replaced with woolly yarn of the same color. Your eyes now lifeless, plastic buttons. What the hell? Hawks whirled his head towards the production team once more, but no one was there. As a matter of fact, none of the furniture, including the cameras, were there either. Nothing, except for that one bulky camera with its glaring light. The room began to spin as he turned to face you, or what used to be you, once more. Takami became dizzy. Voices started to swirl around him, paired with a deafening ringing in his ears. Now, we have a very special guest today at the Dream House.
He's our number 2 hero and your number 1 dreamboat, a man of immense speed.
Run and hide.
And incredible precision.
Pathetic excuse of a hero.
And yes, it is confirmed that he saved 4 people while flying to the studio this morning.
How many have you killed?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all my non-binary and gender-fluid friends, give it up for the winged hero himself, Takami!
Keigo! The small boy braced himself as he was thrown onto the floor. The sound of shattering glass invaded his eardrums as shards of empty beer bottles split open on his hands. He remained on his hands and knees as footsteps slowly approached him. A pair of tattered slippers came into his peripheral as a figure crouched down beside him and took a deep sigh. Tell me, son, why do you hate me? The man's voice was eerily calm. I don't hate you, Dol-san. Keigo kept his eyes trained on the floor and his voice as flat as possible. Is that so? He purred. Because someone who didn't hate their father wouldn't want to put his life in danger by leaving the house. Now would he? No, Dol-san. Exactly. His father paused. Keigo could feel his eyes on him. He willed his feathers to remain still. But, you see, his father continued, for some reason, and I can't put my damn finger on it, you don't seem to be getting it. So allow me to spell it out for you. Repeat after me. I, Takami Keigo. I, Takami Keigo, the boy repeated flatly, am a burden to my entire family. Am a burden to my entire family. And there is absolutely nothing I can do right. And there is absolutely nothing I can do right. As a matter of fact, the man continued, crouching lower and leaning closer so the boy could take in each and every syllable. My father's life would have been so much better if I were never born in the first place. As a matter of fact, Keigo began, my father's life would have... He kept his eyes to the floor, mentally training the lines in the tiles, circling each crack on the worn-down floor in an attempt to distract himself from his own words. My father's life would have been much... So much. Keigo faltered. So much better if I were... He caught himself taking shallow breaths. He felt his heart racing, his throat closing up. Keigo dug his palms into the glass in an attempt to keep himself grounded, but it wasn't working. He tried again. If I were never... The tiles began to shift as his vision blurred, melding itself into one dingy gray blob. The boy felt a shiver run down his spine. He blinked back tears. No.
No, he can't cry. He can't show any emotion. Finish the sentence. Eyes to the floor. Don't move. Why can't you get this right?
The sound of crying echoed in the space. But the tears weren't Keigo's. The boy, no, man, looked up from his hands to find you. You were kneeling with your hands in your lap and head slumped towards the floor, crying tears so fat he could see them from the other side of the room. The room was pitch black, sparing the bright red light that shone in the corner. Takami tried to stand to make sure you were okay, but as he was crouching upwards, he felt himself being slammed backwards into a hard surface. He found himself seated at a booth. A table pressed so hard into his ribcage, he was barely able to breathe, let alone move. 4 four-piece nuggets and a large styrofoam cup laid neatly in front of him. Then, out of the shadows, materialized something he never thought he'd see in front of him in the flesh. A pair of black boots. Legs covered in oversized khaki pants paired with a matching fur-trimmed coat. A black compression top that contrasted well with its yellow accents. Black gloves, full brows, unruly hair, and a pair of scarlet red wings. His amber eyes glowed in the darkness. He kept his eyes trained on Takami as he drew a large feather from his wings. Takami was so distracted by his doppelganger, he didn't even notice that you had stopped crying until the room was completely silent. Slowly, you lifted your head to face him, opening your eyes to reveal the same lifeless buttons from before. Takami's doppelganger took a step forward, and another, and another, until he was directly behind you. Raspy breathing came from your form as you attempted to mimic life. Your mouth twitched and quivered.
No, wait! Before Takami could even think to move, he was witnessing your body being impaled by his own feathers. The man shot up in his bed in a cold sweat and immediately ran to the bathroom to vomit.
Y'all, I love chicken nuggets. Like, I love chicken nuggets.
Y'all are like, wow, I love watching Space Freckles videos. They're so therapeutic and they help me fall asleep. Meanwhile, my videos are like...
I choked. Well, it's 4 pieces. Wendy's 4 for 4. Blah, blah, blah. I will crush some nugs. I'm afraid I can only provide payment for your comedic services in the form of a strawberry milkshake. He's a gentleman. A gentleman. A gentleman.
Even though y'all are literally on a date at a fast food restaurant, despite him being one of the richest men in Japan.
Out of the shit show that is my Out of the shit show that was my mediocre Dude, my lips are so chapped. I can't. Yikes. That's tough. Don't touch me! Space Dog is here and she is not digging these screaming sessions. She's like, I'm gonna go hide under the bed now, cause I'm scared, you said, ripping your hands out of him. Ooh, what? Are we Armin? Like Takami could ever... Ooh, that was weird. Are you an idiot? Pfft, no. Maybe, I don't know. Your eyes widened as you lowered the door to reveal Kuro's wound eyes. And I love these comments that my beta reader left on this story. Like when you write something and somebody else acknowledges your work, it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. But also these comments are hilarious. There was one that they left right after reader just like decks Kuro in the face with the door. Yep, reader is a force to be reckoned with. Do not piss them off. Reader's like, don't fuck with me. I had the power of Sky Daddy and anime on my side. Wow. And then just proceeds to wield the door as a weapon. A shaky voice whipped. You literally just deck this dude with a door. It's a whole entire door, dude. Okay, thank you again. Okay, thank you. Bye. That's me, like at any sort of restaurant. The waiter pours my water. Oh, gee, thanks. Hey, just checking in to see how everything's doing. Oh, it's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I decided I don't want to be a waiter anymore, so I took all your money and ran off with the food. Oh, gee, thank you. Because customer service jobs are hard, man. People are mean. Dude, I love broccoli. Broccoli's my favorite vegetable. What's y'all's favorite vegetables? Leave a comment. It's like a kamehameha. Kamehameha. To hide the blush that crept on his neekin checks. To sit here and pour out my hort. You asked to see the VHS tapes Kuro blot. The VHS tapes Kuro blot. Blot. I am Hercules Mulligan. Honks? It's Honks as a cloud. Honks.